Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Kevin and Fred Show. My name is Kevin Kaufman. That's Fred Weaver. And we're the aptly named Kevin and Fred. And welcome back to the podcast 2 weeks in a row, buddy. Proud of you.
Woo!
Fourth appearance this year.
Glad to be here. Did you guys hear the round of applause I was given before
guaranteed
play and record?
No, not a chance. So dude, we got quite a few comments too on our episode last week where we talked about the news of OpenDoor getting a rather large fine slap on the hand from the FTC for $62 million. That was interesting. I think there's still a lot more to come from that. Some of that we'll talk about this week with their apparent new frenemy, Zillow partner, frenemy. I'm not real sure what to call OpenDoor and Zillow. Frenemy feels like the most appropriate thing. So we'll talk about that today. And then
BFRNs. It's like a BFF, but it's just your best friend right now.
I've never heard of that. Is that
I
a real
just
thing?
made that up. I don't know.
You just heard that up? That sounds like
I just made that up.
that's like a Finstagram where it's like something the kids made up and it's like it sounds real.
Maybe it'll have a life of its own.
What'd you call it? BFRN?
BFRN. It's my best friend right now.
Dude, that's gonna take off.
You think that's taking off?
I think you might have found something.
BFRN. Hashtag.
Anyways, what else are we gonna talk about today, dude?
Well, I think the overwhelming story so far here in early August 2022, at least in the real estate news sector, is just the talk around real estate and technology and the disruptions and the fines and the profitability and the lack thereof, and Inman Connect, and just all these conversations kind of converging around real estate and tech here in August of 2022. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that.
You know, speaking of that too, this is a great segue, is because this company is invested into so many of these other some of the companies' names you're going to bring up in a moment. But like earnings release for a lot of tech companies have been happening over the last like 10 days. SoftBank lost 23 billion. That's with a B, ladies and gentlemen. SoftBank lost $23 billion last quarter, not last year.
And it wasn't even their worst quarter ever on record.
That's crazy, right? 23 billion with a B they lost in the last quarter. And I think maybe you're going to share some of the reason why when we talk about some of those the Inman Connect talking points.
Yeah, well, let's just start with the fact that, you know, whether you like our opinion on things or not, the reason that you and I have always been okay talking about the OpenDoors and the offer pads and the Zillow offers, because I like seeing new things show up in our industry. I like people that try new stuff, right?
Absolutely.
I don't knock on that. Now, do I like people that flat out, you know, try to put the blame in some of their marketing on real estate agents? Nah, of course not, right? But I think there's just as much flack that comes from real estate agents to those tech companies trying to disrupt our industry as there is that goes back the other way. It's like kind of a two-way street. So as you mentioned on our last podcast, people were kind of dancing and rejoicing in the streets over the SEC's fine. A couple days later, Zillow followed up the OpenDoor SEC fine news by, you know, announcing that they are actually going to offer a button on their website where you can request an offer on your home via their BFRN OpenDoor.
Yeah, formerly arch rivals, now BFRNs.
Yeah,
that really is.
It's just further proof that these companies have fairly deep pockets. We'll get a little deeper into that
for sure,
and they're going to continue to try to reinvent themselves and raise cash and capital and make the changes they need. Again, I think as agents, all we need to do is, like, we don't have to lose all the money that they're losing to realize that there's something out there that consumers are at least open to, which is a more seamless, easier way to perhaps trade in their house versus sell it, or at least they're open to viewing multiple offers in different ways to sell their house versus just sign in the yard, put the house on the MLS. The majority of people are still going to the MLS, getting the most amount of money. Real estate agents are still heavily involved in the transaction, but I personally think it's kind of cool watching these guys just trip all over themselves and then also find a win along the way as they try to sort of reinvent the way things are done.
Yeah. So, you know, one thing that I want to reiterate, I said it last week, I'm going to say it again, because I think it's worth repeating, because everyone, like, not everyone, a lot of agents want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Which is OpenDoor, Zillow, etc. They're all bad. Bad. That's just not true. Like, if we just look at it for the simple fact of, again, they're offering consumers something that we weren't offering them. And so now we have to compete around that. And if we're really smart and intelligent, we'll just take the cues from them, right? So they're not all bad. And on the other side, again, real estate agents are not bad either. In fact, they're needed now more than ever, in my opinion. They're literally needed more than ever today. And so to these companies who want to, at the end of the day, these companies, I mean, we're gonna share some stats from, how do you say it, Mike DelPrete?
Mike DelPrete.
DelPrete, DelPrete,
No, Preti. You're saying now you're messing me up. It's Mike DelPrete.
Mike DelPrete.
I just heard him say his own name for the first time.
So we're gonna hear some of this where he shares some of the stats from with what's really going on in the world with buyers and sellers and companies, and some of the truth rather than the noise.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't already, in the show notes, we're going to make note to a video that you should go watch.
Yeah.
Mike DelPrete did a presentation at Inman Connect in Las Vegas here earlier this month, and it's a 17-minute presentation entitled WTF. But what I thought was kind of interesting is I pulled out some of the slides and listened to that, and I learned some new things, and then I wasn't surprised in a few other things along the way. But since we're talking about OpenDoor and Zillow, and we're talking about tech, and whether these models are sustainable or not, let's just talk about some of the numbers.
Okay.
So first of all, it's kind of like a no-brainer for most of us, or at least we all recognize that like most real estate tech stocks are down year to date and over the last 12 months.
Yeah, I think that's what I've heard.
Some of them ranging from 60 to 85%, depending upon who you want to look at, but
Yeah.
kind of interesting, right? OpenDoor's total net losses since 2017 are now up to $1.6 billion. So their net loss for 2021 was between 6 and 700 million, taking their total net losses up to 1.6 billion. Not far behind them, Zillow's net losses in 2021, and I believe they halted business in 2021
Well,
too.
for Zillow offers.
For
they
Zillow
halted.
offers. Thank you. Okay. So
Yeah.
they halted some Zillow offers, but Zillow offers, this is just Zillow offers net losses, 1.5 billion.
Yeah, well, because that was the cash that they raised too. Like, wasn't it 1.5 billion
Yeah.
that they raised?
And I'm sorry, 1.5 billion for 2019, 20, and 21. 2021 was almost $1 billion in net losses. So you can kind of see why they shut down. But before you want to go just poke at them, right? It's really easy to go, well, those dumb idiots that never sold real estate before.
Of course, yeah.
Compass is a real estate brokerage, like a well-funded or previously well-funded real estate brokerage that you just referenced.
It's running out.
They're up to 1.7 billion, 1.7 billion in net loss, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21 combined. So over the last 6 years, 1.7 billion.
That kid. So that say, what's that old saying? You have to spend money to make money or something. I think maybe I think that's getting stretched a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
I love Mike DelPrete. He referenced Richard Branson, who you and I both follow and like pretty well. He says, if you want to be a millionaire, start with $1 billion and launch a new airline.
Yeah.
Right. Like
launch a new real estate tech company.
So we're kind of in this model now of, I think it's most of us understand when companies start, Amazon, et cetera, like they don't start with instant profitability, right? There's something to be said about having to change the way a whole industry business is done. But we're now entering a phase of like what is starting to be sustained unprofitability for some of these companies. They're like Zillow offers, for example, shut down the operations for the reasons of they couldn't sustain that unprofitability, right? And now they're partnering with their BFRN. Cash, of course, is king. We've kind of always known that. I'd like one of the things Mike DelPrete said, which I thought was pretty cool. For those of you that geek out on like, public company financials, he said, you can't pay your bills in adjusted EBITDA, like adjusted EBITDA.
You actually have to pay with cash.
Yeah,
like
you have to actually pay your bills with cash, right? So he showed some slides, which again, you should go watch the video. We're going to link here in the show notes, but he showed some slides about, cash and cash burn. And what's interesting is like, EXP, Douglas Elliman, Redfin, Compass, these are all, for the most part, pretty tech forward brokerages, right? And, most of them have a pretty decent amount of cash on hand. But what the concerning piece for 3 of those 4 brokerages is that there's a cash burn going on, right? Douglas Elliman, Redfin, Compass, first quarter of 2022, like they were unsustainable models from the standpoint of they burned cash, right? And so EXP, on the other hand, burned cash, if you will, but their cash balance went up. So these other companies' cash balance went down as they're just burning through stuff. And what was interesting is like, now, again, Mike DelPrete even said, you can't just take the first quarter of 1 year and run it out over time. But what's interesting is like EXP's model, which now for a couple of years has had cash on hand rising, right? Versus Douglas Elliman, Redfin, and Compass. Like if those guys continue to burn the cash that they burned in the first quarter of 2022,
they'll run out of it.
Like Compass has like 10 quarters left, right? Redfin has like 28 quarters left. Douglas Elliman has like 40 quarters left if they don't do something different.
Yeah, that's a problem. It's really funny. because this is not an episode about EXP or a pitch for EXP, but
Maybe it
obviously
should be.
you and I are what only for people who understand math. And so you and I, we made the move to EXP just over 4 years ago. And what's the one thing we heard from all the detractors? That, well, don't go there. That model's not sustainable. Sustainable. It's not sustainable. Not sustainable. What I'm hearing is actually, I don't know. Actually, it sounds like it's might be the only one that really is at this point of the new ones, right?
It's crazy. Compass's latest earning call, they kind of, they were asked what's gonna change for you, and they basically try to put a positive spin on saying that they were gonna tax their agents more, right? They were gonna change their splits to get more of the commission dollar. Which, if you're a Compass agent out there, all due respect to you, I love it. Be whatever brokerage you want to be at, but many Compass agents are already paying a pretty decent amount of money to be at that company to begin with, and now they're faced with being charged more to even be there.
Did you say they were going to tax their agents?
Well, I mean, isn't that what a
That's
commission split is to a
that's
degree?
very real of them.
Yeah,
Very real.
pretty interesting stuff. So, yeah, I mean, there was a lot that was kind of shared and talked about. One of the other things that was talked about was the transaction volumes of some of these. We'll call them, sort of. What kind of brokers do you want to call these? Technology brokerages, for lack of a better
Maybe
term.
tech first.
Tech, okay,
I don't
tech
know.
for. I
Tech
mean,
forward.
most people would say, yeah, Redfin, Compass, EXP. They're sort of tech forward, tech first,
Yeah.
whatever. Okay, so the transaction volumes of these companies, and there was a slide that kind of showed, and then it had Realogy up there, right? Like the beast that's been there for a long time. 2017, 2018, 2019, like there was some slow, gradual growth amongst Redfin, Compass, and EXP. EXP and Compass were both growing a lot faster than Redfin in transaction volume. But then you see what's happened 2020 and 2021, and EXP's taken off. Compass has done better, but at the detriment of their financials, while EXP's taken off at the benefit of their financials. Meanwhile, Redfin's just kind of hanging around with slow growth, if you will. But then you compare that to a Realogy. EXP actually has now crossed Realogy in terms of transaction volume during 2020 and 2021. Like they crossed over.
That's
like EXP is
wild.
now past Realogy. I
That's
thought it was pretty
wild.
interesting.
That's really wild. So,
And the last thing I'll say on this is the most interesting thing to me in all this is that, like, Mike DelPrete, who's studying this stuff, right, making this presentation, it's like all these tech forward brokerages would like you to think their tech is going to be what gets them out of the hole or creates
this is where I
profitability.
was going to go.
But agent count is directly tied to all of these companies' profitability or lack thereof. It's agent count. Like that shouldn't shock most of us, but
if it shocks you, you've had your head in the sand and you're unrealistic about this business. You and I had a mentor, a boss even for a little bit, that used to pound into our head that profitability in a real estate brokerage is correlated like 88% with agent count. Agent count is at the end of the day the only thing that really matters. And this is proof of it, right? And so the other thing too that he talked about in this talk at Inman, where he talked about like the Zillows and the OpenDoors and Compass, to your point of like effectively raising their splits. All of these companies now, they've all shifted their, here's how I make money. It's by just getting a part of the real estate agents' commission, right?
yeah.
Getting either some or more of our commission dollars. That's how Zillow plans to grow. That's how Compass is going to apparently stop losing money every quarter for the rest of their existence. That's how all of these companies are going to grow, is by taking more and more from the real estate agent. I'm not saying that's bad. In fact, a lot of it I like, because it's going to force people to innovate or die and to leave the industry. That said, there's going to be a lot of people that lose their lunch if they don't get their stuff together.
Yeah, it's some interesting stuff out there. I mean, we talk a lot about the real estate tech, the investments into our industry and stuff. Last year alone, there was almost 20 billion, over $18 billion worth of real estate tech VC investment. That's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, you take 2015 through 2020, and I'm just doing some rough math here, like 24, like 31 billion, 32, 33 billion over that 6-year period. And last year alone, we saw 18 billion. So all this money's going into our industry. Yet when we look at like who's actually building a sustainable model and or changing the industry and or probably under their current model will still be here 5 years from now, it's the models that are involving the agent at the core of it and growing their transaction count.
Yeah.
So kind of interesting.
I'm going to
Also, I
keep
thought you might like that one too. If you want to share that with our viewers, just the iBuyer spending, kind of, share that as we end.
iBuyer advertising spending. Oh my goodness. So 2017, so it looks like about 5 to $10 million worth of spend. 2018, about 40, $45 million worth of spend. 2019, about 110, $120,000 worth. 2020 considerably lower as expected, just over 50 million, maybe 60 million. 2021 though, just a hair under 200 million, about $175 million in advertising spend.
With one of the big players, Zillow offers kind of stepping out. But
Yeah.
now what's interesting is if you consider for a minute that Zillow offers is going to put a big open door button on their website, I don't know that you're going to count that as an advertising dollar, but if they did have to pay for that real estate space, as an example,
Yeah.
what would that graph look like a year from now?
Yeah. I mean, so what this tells me, my thought is if they're going to sink money into that, if that's going to be the thing that goes up, that's the thing. And you and I know this by keeping our ear to the ground is that's the thing that resonates with the consumers, right? Is having that option, right? People can listen, you can discount it all day long. You can say it's never in the best interest of your client. Bullshit. You're wrong. It is in the best interest if they decide that it's in their own best interest. It's not always about the most money. It's not your decision to make. Being a fiduciary is not always the most money. It's about what's most valuable and most important to that person. And so that tells me like, hey, they know that they've hit a nerve or they've struck a nerve with the consumer. And like we all have to address it. Like we have to have that in our arsenal if we're going to service a good portion of the deals that are available.
Yeah. Yeah. Go watch Mike DelPrete's presentation, 17 minutes long, pretty educational, pretty funny, but filled with all kinds of data. And I think you'll arrive at a place you probably knew, which is agents are, still very central to the transaction and everything else. And, you look at the data on FISBO sales versus sales with agents, blah, blah, blah. Agents are still central, but you can't also just say, well, all this other noise around me doesn't matter when 20 billion, nearly 20 billion, right, in VC tech investment is going into your industry in a given year. Like there's going to be a lot of noise around your job. So you got to have your ear to the ground enough to see what's going on and make some decisions on how where you side and what you want to share with clients. But at the same time, you also have to remember like these companies still very much need us. That's evident.
Yeah. One thing I'll say about the video, and again, to Fred's points, it's linked in the notes. Um, it would be very easy to dismiss it if you're a KW agent or a Compass agent and go, oh, this is a pitch for EXP because the data that he shares, or it's a pitch for tech companies like OpenDoor and OfferPad. It's none of those things. It's some very factual evidence. And what you'll find towards the end when Mike starts to wrap up his message is that us, the real estate agent, the real estate broker involved in the transaction, is not just needed more than ever, is wanted more than ever by the consumer. And therefore, but he's given you insight on how to take that message to them. And so I would highly encourage you to take the next I think it's a 17-minute or 22-minute long video. I forget exactly. Take that time and watch it. Like do it now. In fact, right now.
That was fantastic.
See you guys next week.